Hey everybody, welcome back to Absolutely Marvel and DC. I'm Dylan, that's Dan. Benny is absent currently. I know he's been on most of these Flash discussions, but he's going through a move right now. So he will be back next week, and he'll super fast Flash speed catch up on the episodes, and we can hear his opinions. But
do you really have to say it like that? Oh yeah. My god, he's gonna speed force watch all the episodes. Oh my gosh, I would not be surprised if Benny was like, "Oh crap, I gotta catch up. All right, I'm gonna put all 5 episodes on at the exact same time."
Just downloads the information into his brain. I would not be surprised. No. So this was episode 4 of The Flash, season 7, yes. but it really is.
It was episode 1. It was 100% episode 1. When this one started, my first thought was, okay, so this is supposed to be the season premiere. Are they going to make it transition well, or is it going to feel like an episode 1? No, it was an episode 1. Like, in no way did I think, yes, this was clearly meant to come right after the other one as a same season episode. No, it's episode 1.
I honestly, like, the only line in here that I was like, I wonder if they added that after they knew that this was going to be episode 4 was when the reporter who is, and honestly this could have been ADR. I didn't look close enough at her mouth, but the reporter that's like at the beginning is talking about the attack that Mirror Monarch did. She's like, the attack that happened last week and usually like that's like a running gag in the CW shows, is that every episode there's a week of time in between them.
Right.
So maybe there's an earlier draft of this script where she said like 3 months ago. Yeah. When that attack happened or whatever, but who knows? Maybe it was always planned to have picked up a week after. But usually season breaks, there is like a time jump in between. That's like a really easy writing crutch to like entice your viewers into like, oh, why is this character in a new status quo? What happened between seasons? But that's, you know what? Fair play. They didn't do that this time. Yep. It just picks right up, and it feels different, obviously, like you said. Right. Like, it definitely feels like a premiere, but everyone's in the same space. No huge like status quo shifts have happened.
Well, at least until the end of the episode. Right,
which I want to talk about because that was awesome. But we'll get there. I overall liked this episode, and I think it was kind of fresh. It had some really rough parts, but what did you think?
I agree. I think it was a good episode. I feel like my expectations were a little high because of how hyped up the last 3 episodes have been, because
agreed,
they were finale episodes. Like, those are supposed to have huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of hype, and this one was a series premiere that lacked that kind of stuff. So I feel like because of the episode manner that we were put into, I was a little let down because of that, but at the same time, I understood. Like, I knew this was supposed to be episode 1 for season 7, and so keeping that in mind, I did enjoy it. I liked that we kind of started going into the trauma for Iris being like in the Mirrorverse for as long as she was, other people struggling with it, and then realizing like, oh god, she was in there for 3 months and we were in there for like a week. Like, it was a cool, it reminded me honestly of the Marvel universe, like the blip, like discussion groups or whatever you would call them. It reminded me a little bit of that, but I did like that we ventured a lot into how much this affected Iris and how much this is going to affect Iris, as well as how much it affected Barry of not realizing that it wasn't Iris. Like, the emotional turmoil you could see that Barry has gone through because of this, of like, no, I was so certain that was Iris, that I feel like we might get some potential fallout from that later on in the show, of Barry being almost overly suspicious of people, of like, wait a second, are you really Iris again, or did something happen? But I liked the way that they used what's his name? Abracadabra. I thought that it was an interesting use of the villain. I kind of was expecting a little more from him than just a one episode villain. But the She-Hulk that we got.
Oh yeah. I was going to say real quick, I'm glad Abracadabra is not the season villain. I was worried about that.
No, I will agree with that. I'll definitely agree with that, because a magic-based villain where it's just constant as misdirection, you've got the handcuffs now.
Yeah.
No, that would get tired very, very quickly. That would get old quite quickly. But I did like that. I did like the way that they used the Crisis in the future. I thought that was kind of cool, of how Crisis did not just change everyone's current status quo.
Right.
Like, even in the future, they started having dreams and memories of their life pre-Crisis. So I did like that they kind of dove into that bit. But yes, no, I'm glad that he's not going to be the season villain, because that would be it would be an interesting one to deal with.
And I do agree with the dream stuff being interesting. I hope that they go into that more as the season goes on, because that's like talking about comics a little bit. When Secret Wars ended, the Marvel event, the multiverse was reset, and nobody knew about it except a few cherry-picked characters. And kind of the mandate, I think, from editorial was that pretend it didn't happen and just move on, even though it was a fantastic event that pretty much everyone universally loved. But they were like, we're getting back on track. The mandate is no more multiverse, even though Spider-Gwen is still running and is unaffected. But there was an interesting series that Brian Michael Bendis wrote called Jessica Jones, where the whole point of it was that people were starting to remember that Secret Wars happened, and she was investigating it as someone who didn't remember that it happened. And obviously the only reason Bendis was able to get away with that is because he's Bendis, and no one will stop him from doing anything.
Yeah,
which is part of the problem. But and I like when, all that just to say that I like when consequences of earth-shattering, multiverse resetting things happen. And I hope, I guess I agree with you here. I hope that Abracadabra isn't just I don't want him to come back, but I hope his plot line of people remembering things pre-Crisis, it comes back, because I think that's a really interesting angle with trauma and just character in general, superhero nonsense. There's a lot you can do there that I feel like if they ignore it is just missed opportunity, which I feel like a lot of writers do, where they'll use a crisis. Crisis is the crisis. They just use it as an excuse to change status quo and then not deal with any of the obvious questions that would crop up from that. Right. So I hope they do deal with it.
A question for you then. How would you feel if they brought back Reverse Flash? And I say this because of the fact that we saw the scene when Eobard Thawne steals Harrison Wells' body, because then we got the scroll over to him coming back as the time-traveling Wells, essentially. And I'm wondering, actually, as I say this, I'm wondering if we will get that time-traveling Wells again, because he technically went back to a time pre-Crisis. That's like that.
But did he?
He supposedly did. He went back to
I don't think he did. Because Crisis is a space thing, right? It's not a time thing. So, the way I see it...
It had to have happened in some sort of time thing, because that was the whole point to Abracadabra, was that... Okay,
I'm saying, if Crisis rippled out from the point that it happened into the future, it had to have rippled out to the past to say things are different in their past, we just haven't seen them yet. So I think the time, unless they want to just MacGuffin him that he can just go anywhere in the multiverse and he's not just a time traveler, which fair enough, but if he is just straight up time traveling back to the point where he was Happy Wells with his wife and everything, I think he would be going back to the post-Crisis version of that era, not the pre-Crisis version. unless he also has the ability to go back to pre-Crisis universes.
Yeah.
Which maybe, but
because the fact that he can do that is tied in a little bit to Eobard Thawne, and I'm curious whether or not we're gonna get. I hope he's not the main villain, because that would be
right.
really frustrating. But I'm wondering if we'll see him at all, because of the fact that his entire thing is based on the fact that he's from the future on a certain version of the Flash, and then goes back to be the reason to cause the trauma to cause the Flash. Everyone knows the craziness behind that character, and I'm wondering how much, or whether at all, the Crisis will affect that character, and whether or not we'll see him come back again, because they made it very clear Harrison Wells is back from that exact scene, and they showed Thawne there. So I'm curious whether or not we'll see Thawne. I hope we don't. But the question of, does Crisis change all of time? It's an interesting one, because if it does, is it a just straight Crisis happened, everything changes? Or is it, like you said, of Crisis happens, the ripple effect starts changing things, and Eobard's so far in the future that he tries to stop the ripple of some kind? Like, there's a lot of possibility there, but that's all just random theories and stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit more towards.
I want to before we get to the video game character that showed up at the end.
Yes.
I want to talk about the blip stuff you were mentioning earlier. Is I have a qualm with you bringing that up, because you've made this episode worse in my eyes now. Because you compared the fantastic writing device of killing half of the population and then skipping forward 5 years and having the fallout of that felt over multiple television shows and movies to, I don't know, I was in a mirror world for 3 months.
I mean, because it was just they were removed, and it was a change in the lifestyle for the people that were out there and the people that had gone in. And that was just kind of the vibe I got from it.
Right. You're totally right. It's the same plot device, and it's the same beat, but it is not earned in this show.
Oh, no. I'm not comparing quality here.
Sure. That's like during that scene, during the the focus group scene, or not focus group, support group scene.
Support group, yeah.
I was like, something's weird here. Like, this doesn't seem, and when she said 3 months and everyone was shocked, I had to remind myself that 3 months is a long time, like comparatively to everyone was in there for a few days.
Yeah.
But she was in there for 3 months. But like 3 months to most adult people is not a long time. So it's hard to like, it's hard to feel for that character when, yes, you saw her in there for so long, and she's clearly dealing with the trauma and stuff, but it's hard to like, you know, you put a very real scenario of a support group and a trauma center, but it's hinging on being trapped in a mirror world, which is just such an unrelatable thing. But like comparatively in Endgame, when you see that same like support group that Cap is running, the linchpin there is not that half the universe got snapped away by a purple man who came from outer space. The linchpin there is that everybody here lost people. That is something that humans can relate to. I don't know about you, but I've never been in a mirror world. So
well, I think it was less being in the mirror world and more the knowledge that someone can replace you without anyone else realizing it. And
that hasn't happened to me either.
Luckily, that hasn't happened to me yet either, and I hope it never will. Knock on wood.
That does suck, though. That was an interesting, because I couldn't tell why the scene wasn't like working for me, and you comparing it to the blip completely, like, yeah, that's it. That's why. Yeah, because it's just very different.
It's very different, and I think they did a good job of putting it in that situation of the support group, because it really did kind of hammer home how different it was to Iris and for Iris, of like, if it affected everyone else this much for being there just a couple days, I think, maybe a week. I don't think they were really even taken for very long.
No.
Like the comparison there I felt was very needed, because for the viewer, it really hammered home how much longer Iris was gone and how much more this would have affected her. Because first off, I will say it felt a lot longer, but obviously we had the season break, COVID, all of that stuff.
I think
so I'm glad they quantified it. I'm glad they were like, this is the amount of time that happened.
I think it might have been 3 months. Like if you break down the episodes into weeks, I think it might have been close to 3 months, because she gets trapped in the mirror world in like the back half of season 6, and then you have like 12 episodes. So, that's around 3 months worth of episodes. So I think that was something that I noticed when she said that. She said 3 months, and I was like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. That tracks. If we are assuming that these episodes happen linearly. But anyway, Mirrorverse nonsense aside, let's talk about
She-Hulk.
She-Hulk. This show needs to knock it off with the big CG monsters. They never look good.
They don't. It honestly, my first thought was, wait, I'm watching DC, right? Because I just saw She-Hulk. Like, that's all I saw in it.
I think, to be fair, she does look, I don't remember the character's name, but she does look like the comic book character. Aside from, like, I think she does, like, Hulk out at some point. I don't remember. I don't know why they decided to introduce her in that manner. It's been a minute since if you guys don't know what we're talking about, Benny and Dan were right last episode. The like lightning that went into the sky were the other forces. This is the avatar of the Strength Force is that big character. I don't remember her name, but she wears that like leotard and has that ponytail and is like really buff, which like, boy, she better not be hulked out next time we see her, because that looked horrible.
Oh my gosh, yes, no, I 100% agree with that. It was so bad.
So my first thought, because I had that when you guys said like I had completely forgotten about the other forces and stuff last episode before you guys told me that was where you were thinking it was going, and you were completely spot on. When Abracadabra showed up, I was like, oh, he's gonna be like the Sage Force avatar, which was not.
Interesting. Okay.
But that's before he turned around, and I was like, oh, that's that guy. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. We're starting. This is the Sage Force avatar. But then he turned around, and I was like, oh, it's this Joker. But yeah, they're just completely like going full tilt into it. Where do you think like they're going with this?
So first off, I think the point of Abracadabra was to kind of show bring back the Barry does not have to fight everyone. Barry can talk down some people. I have a feeling that there's a good chance that's going to be how he handles the Sage Force. Honestly, I would not be surprised if the Sage Force turned out to be a good guy.
Yeah,
like, I mean, I think that would be kind of cool. Plus, part of me wonders if it's a little related to Caitlin. But that's beside the point, because she only just started getting the headaches after that entire situation. But we'll get to there later. I'm surprised they introduced the Strength Force first, and that they did it in a way that almost made it feel. I'm only going to say this because I just read House of M for the Wolverine story. Reminded me of Sebastian Shaw, of the absorbing of powers and becoming stronger because of it. Because that was something that she did that I don't remember the Strength Force being able to do. I thought the Strength Force was just you got incredibly strong. You had essentially the Strength Force, just like Barry has the Speed Force. He can move super fast. But Barry can't absorb other powers. So I thought that was interesting, and I couldn't tell if it well, I mean, it was clearly her absorbing the Speed Force, because then she gets super speed.
Does she?
Or at least she moved a lot faster, because she grabbed the Flash out of mid-run. Like, she jumps over him and grabs him before he can run away. And
I'm gonna be honest. I was just, my brain hurt like looking at that, so I don't know if I was fully processing what was happening in that scene, because I do remember seeing like when she absorbed the lightning that Barry threw at her. I was like, oh, is she gonna go fast now? Because that's always what happens. And then I remember thinking, oh, they didn't do that, but maybe they did, and it was just subtle, and I didn't notice it.
It was the fact that she was able to jump over to him and grab him before he could run off. That was me going, she's got the Speed Force. We've just given the Hulk, the She-Hulk, to Speed Force as well as maybe magic as well as like, what is it? Antimatter? Like she's
like nanobots or something.
Like it was something crazy that she's now absorbing things. So I'm curious. I hope they don't go in the direction that we tend to get with absorption-based villains, where it's just, okay, we're going to overload her with energy so that she can no longer absorb anything else. Because that's my least favorite thing of absorbing characters. Because that's always what it is. It's always overload the absorption kind of thing. So I kind of hope they don't do anything too crazy with that, but I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that we got the Strength Force, and I'm curious whether or not they're going to divide up the season by going, hey, here are all the different forces at the same time, just we're going to go Strength, then Sage, then Still, then Speed. I feel like there's another one that I'm missing, and then kind of like go through alternating, and then at the end kind of combine them all. But I hope that they make the Sage Force a good guy. I do hope one of the forces is on the side of good, right? Because I don't want the easy assumption that they're all going to be bad guys.
I think so. I looked her up and the Strength Force while you were talking there, and so, and I think good news is like for those that haven't read the comics, so I looked her name up. Her name is Alexa Antigone, and looking at her again, I'll throw up an image. She does look different in the show. It's the reason why I thought she looked so similar was because it is like a very similar outfit, and I think it might have been what she first appeared in, but like in the comics she still has a ponytail, but it's like dreads. So I don't know why they've changed that. I don't know who's been cast in that role, but right. I know like this character Alexa is like part of her character is that where's she from? She's from Corto Maltese and is like a not like a freedom fighter, but like a like she helps her community out a lot with the Strength Force from what I remember.
So Robin Hood style stuff.
Yeah, sort of like that style character. And she is like generally like a good person. And I think she is going to be the one that is good here. A, because they introduced her first, and B, because she showed up for the first time way bigger than she obviously is going to be, and with literal fangs out of her mouth. So I think they're going to like calm her down and be like, okay, let's figure out your Strength Force stuff, and then she'll reel it in and then be the good one, because she's also the good one in the comics, and they've proven that they don't like go too far away from the comics, especially lately, since they're adapting stories that came out like literally 2 years ago or less.
Yeah, no kidding.
Which is crazy to me.
So something I actually just thought of, by the way. I'm curious whether or not they're doing something small to Barry's emotions, because ever since he destroyed the artificial Speed Force, I feel like he's been almost overly emotional to the point that it's affecting his ability to think rationally, which we saw when he immediately launched lightning at her. Like, there was no even hesitation. Like, it was just instant lightning. I mean, yes, she did just kill Abracadabra. Yeah. But at the same time, I felt like I don't know. It felt like there might be something there. Maybe not entirely noticeable. Maybe it's not going to be a huge thing just yet. But that on top of kind of his emotional turmoil with the iris and the duplicate and him being so remorseful and like questioning himself of how does he know what's real? How does he not know what's real? I feel like they're going to put a lot more emotion into the character. And I don't know if it's going to be just simply they're giving Barry more emotion, or if it's going to be related to something else. Like maybe someone else is like accentuating the different emotions so that they go more extreme, because he also gets I just felt like all the emotion in this was very extreme when it came to Barry. Like he was either almost not there or emotionally overflowing. So I don't know if that was just me reading into it, if it was just I don't know what it could have been, whether or not it's just nothing, but it would be interesting to see if we do get the emotions playing a lot bigger factor when it comes to superheroing. So I mean that one's kind of a stretch, but I'm excited to see the different forces. I'm curious to see what they're going to be able to do with them. I'm wondering if the fourth force is going to be the still force, or if it's going to be a different one.
Because they've done Turtle before, and nobody likes that.
Exactly. They've done the still force in a way before. Plus, in the comics, we realized that Barry could access the still force. Like he just had to stop. Right. Like that was what he had to do to access the still force. So I'm curious whether or not that's going to change, or whether that's going to still be that. But I'm excited for this. I like having the different forces. I like having those different aspects of a main villain being the forces, but having different avatars for them to add different elements to the forces, as opposed to just we've got different villains. Right. Like I like that interconnecting aspect to it. So I mean, I'm excited.
I think long term for this season, the forces are going to become they're going to take a back seat, where that's going to be like the first arc.
Okay.
I think personally what I got out of this episode that kind of relates to what you were saying about Barry's emotions is I think, and I hope at least on one of these things, the overarching like themes of this season are going to be leaning into Barry as the paragon of love, which I don't really care for, but it really seems like after this season finale last week and the premiere here, where like in both cases the like main villain of the episode is taken down by Barry being the paragon of love,
right?
And related to that, I hope this is the one that I hope they do, is that the rest of the season is going to be dealing with Crisis,
okay,
and like we talked about, memories and stuff from Crisis, and characters coming back, whether that be Thawne or I don't know, like didn't last time that Barry messed with time in Flashpoint, wasn't one of the ripple effects that the Pied Piper was a good guy? So maybe
something like that.
We'll get more of that.
That would be cool.
Stuff like that, like I think would be interesting. The main, like, the Flash is the show now. Like, it's the headliner. So all the big stuff is going to happen in this show. And I don't know how long it's going to take them to get back onto wanting to do interconnected like crossovers and stuff, especially considering that Supergirl is ending and Batwoman is ending, and right. Black Lightning is like disconnected, and so is Superman and Lois, and you know we don't have that Arrow spinoff. That's not happening anymore. So
thank goodness.
It's all I mean, it's all kind of in flux. So I think they could, once they get their footing in, they could finally answer questions like, obviously Supergirl lives in this universe now, and everyone from her universe has come over, and other universes have been merged. what's the deal? Where, like, what are the effects of that? Because seemingly nothing has changed since then.
Right.
So I think once we deal with the forces, which I don't think is going to take too long. I don't think there's enough story there for it to take an entire season. But it's the CW, so who knows? But I think I think Crisis is going to be the thing.
I hope so. Because I did like that aspect of it, and Barry or the Flash is the perfect one to put multiversal things into. So
for sure.
I mean, here's hoping. I wouldn't be surprised if they do the forces, clear up most of it, but leave one of them out there. Yeah. And then use that later on as like okay, let's truly get into the forces kind of thing. But
yeah, I'm sure there'll be like an undercurrent throughout the whole thing. Like in the last season, Bloodwork started it all off, and then we got Crisis in the middle of it, and then Eva took over, but then Bloodwork, like, they looped him back in. He wasn't there, but like part of his like plots were helped them solve the thing. So I'm sure the forces are going to be around, and we'll get new characters and stuff. But we want to talk about the last scene with Caitlin.
Yeah. So Caitlin and Killer Frost are now both there.
Yeah, which is I'm so down for. The thing that, like, I love that scene the most is because the second I saw both of them on screen together, I was like, I think I uttered the words mitosis. I was like, I want to see the scene where they, like, split. How did that happen physically? Oh my gosh.
Right. That would be an interesting one to see, because I kind of hope we don't, to be honest, because
no.
You know what, let's just leave that one out there. We'll just say when it happened and we won't go too much. But I like that we're gonna finally have a Killer Frost out in the field and a Caitlin Snow in the lab, both at the same time. Like, because I feel like that was always the problem with when Cisco was Vibe and when Caitlin was Killer Frost. There was no one besides Chester, right? That's the guy's name. There was no one besides him really at home base working on things. And I feel like this was to give him someone to work with while we have Mecha Vibe, as Abracadabra dubbed him, and Killer Frost out there with Flash. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm actually really excited to see how this goes.
Yeah,
I'm really excited.
The main reason why I'm pumped for this is because to my like brain that analyzes a lot of this stuff from like the behind the scenes like perspective, that scene is 100%. I don't know if you picked up on this, but to me it was coded as if they were setting up Danielle Panabaker to leave the show. Because it's the same thing of like when you separate like Firestorm to now they're both separate and they can live on their own, so one of them can go off and not be on the show anymore. But you've written a scene where you've split the character of Caitlin and Frost, but they're played by the same character. Or the same person.
I actually kind of had that same thought too. I was like, oh, that's right, she's leaving. I was like,
but she can't.
Yeah, like, that doesn't make any sense anymore.
Which, like, that's a testament to her acting, I feel, and the writing that they've done is that, like, they've separated these characters so subtly in, like, our minds that when they split them physically, it's like, oh, cool, now, like, Caitlin can leave, or one of them can leave the show.
Right.
But no. Which,
they can leave, but they can't.
Maybe the character, like, maybe it is being set up for Caitlin to leave. Like, the writers are just like, I don't want to write Caitlin anymore, or I don't want to write Frost anymore. Which that was one of my concerns that I had, was now that we do have, like, taking like a head count of everyone who's in Star Labs at any given moment. You've got, Flash, Cisco, Iris, Allegra, Chester, Caitlin, and Frost now, like, and a lot of those people kind of cover the same job and don't need to be there. So, like, they brought Chester in to probably replace Cisco, but now Cisco is still here.
Which, for the record, I really dig their dynamic.
True.
Between Cisco and Chester. Like, honestly, like, that is some quality humor and, like, really good just on stage chemistry between those two characters, and I'm really excited to see that continue.
But I didn't think I would ever hear the machete order of watching the Star Wars films talked about on a network television show. Yeah. But here we are. Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do, because it does seem like that scene to me was coded as if it was the beginning of a plot to say farewell to a character.
Yeah.
So maybe it is just now that I'm like saying it out loud, it kind of does make the most sense that they're writing Caitlin off of the show and they just want to keep Frost. Which, fair enough, for a show that has this many characters, a lot of whom are kind of dead weight and don't really do anything. If you want to clean house, by all means.
I'm curious whether or not the headache that she had is going to show up again. Like I'm wondering if there's something
she's going to split again.
Well, I'm wondering if there is something more behind the fact that she did have a headache before they split. I mean, it could very easily just be that was her brain trying to separate from itself almost. But the fun theorist in me wonders if Caitlin is going to be the avatar of the Sage Force, and the Sage Force kicked out Killer Frost.
Interesting. Right, you mentioned that earlier. You had a theory about that.
But like that, that one's more of just a fun one that I do not see happening. And if it does happen, I'm a wizard when it comes to
you're just
theories, apparently.
Seeds. You're just trying to hit like a home run so everybody knows you're a genius.
I'm doing the Nostradamus thing where I just write 1,000 predictions and some of it will come true, and I'll be like, see, I'm perfect. I'm amazing at it. No, I think it's going to have a lot. I think there's a lot to it, but I would not mind if Caitlin Snow was gone and we only had Killer Frost. I'll be honest. I would not be fully against that. I felt like Caitlin's main purpose was to be Killer Frost. Yeah. But at the same time, we could also go into one of them is going to, Killer Frost is going to deal with the Argus situation while Caitlin Snow deals with the Central City stuff. They could be doing it in that sense of being able to go, we do have a superhero that can actually go off and do this other stuff while everyone still does the main stuff. Because there's clearly something going on with Argus.
Oh, yeah, 100%. We haven't seen Argus in a while, and then suddenly they're just, here in a main plot point. That's gonna come back.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt.
So I have a feeling that's gonna somehow relate to Killer Frost and Caitlin. I'm also wondering whether or not we're gonna get one of those classic, now that Killer Frost and Caitlin are separated, the goodness in Caitlin is going to leave Killer Frost and she's going to go back to her evil ways, which I really hope is not what we actually lean into, because that's just way overdone at this point. But I was excited. I enjoyed seeing that bit. I thought I did kind of like I'll call it the childlike wonder excitement from Killer Frost. Like, hey, this is cool, right? Look at this. This is awesome.
Yeah, that was fun.
But we'll find out. I hope next episode is good. I hope that if it is the Strength Force, that it's done well, and that we don't just have a Hulk situation.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be tough for them to not make that the Strength Force and not go in that direction, because boy, is it. We could be completely wrong. That could not be that character, and it could be nothing to do with anything. It would be very strange, especially with their track record, which I thought about this earlier, with how quickly that this show is adapting recent Flash stories. Do the writers just not want to read anything old, or is every Flash story before 2014 hot steaming garbage?
I don't even know what to say that.
Because they certainly are Bloodwork happened last year. Let's put him in our show. Stuff
I
like
think
that.
I think I mean, you know what? I'm not even going to touch that one because they are doing a lot of different stories, but at the same time, Flash is a very cyclical character where he has gone through a lot of the same plot points at the same time. The Sage Force and Bloodwork obviously were recent, but multiple of the other stories you could very easily say, well, yes, it happened 2 years ago, but it also happened 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 13 years ago. Like, they're just very, very common ideas when it comes to the Flash.
Yeah.
But
I have heard that a lot of Flash stories, they kind of like retread the same ground, which is probably why the first like 3 seasons of the Flash were just the same season. So yeah, that's all I've got to say about this episode. It's tough to talk about premieres because they're just setting everything up, and we really don't know where the show is going at this point. So
I mean, I'm hoping it goes well. I'm hoping we get some answers answered or questions answered and some answers questioned. No, I hope we get some questions answered. I hope they keep some of it still mysterious, because while I did like the abracadabra stuff, I also felt like that maybe wrapped up just a little quickly. But I mean, that one's up to interpretation and preference and stuff like that. I'm also, a small bit of me wonders if abracadabra is related to, or like time travel is, if it's related at all to the Strength Force, because the Strength Force only showed up and only manifested after Barry had talked him down. So I'm wondering if like if something is related to that. But at the same time, it could just be a classic coincidental, she hulked out across town because she sensed the antimatter and wanted to consume it or something like that.
Yeah, that's a whole other, like, there's a lot of stuff in this episode. It's like, why is this happening? Like, why did Caitlin split in two? Why did this She-Hulk character show up? But it's like, it's a premiere. You're not meant to have those answers right away. So
exactly,
it's not a fair criticism to make in a TV show. That's that's the whole point.
But all in all, good season premiere on episode 4.
Ignore it. This is season 7, episode 1.
Is exactly what
it will be in the future when they renumber these episodes for Netflix or whatever.
Oh yeah, if they don't, I'm gonna be shocked. I'm gonna be shocked because it's very, very clear. So
for sure. Well, that all being said, we've been absolutely Marvel and DC, talking about the Flash and stuff. We'll be back next week with Benny, probably see what he thinks about all of this nonsense. He is a lot more knowledgeable about the Flash, and I think the multiple forces
definitely.
than we are. So I read those books, but also I don't really care about the Flash that much in the comics, so it didn't really stick in my brain. But I know enough to get by.
He's one of those characters that for me is very writer and story specific.
Yeah.
He's a very hit or miss character. Just like Superman. Very, very hit or miss for me, where it's like some stories I'm like, oh, this is actually really good. And others I'm like, I am not going to read this. You're not going to make me read this.
All right. Well, be sure to like and subscribe, click the bell, leave a comment. Let us know what you guys thought about this episode 4 season premiere type beat. And we'll be back next week for more Flash, more CW shows. I think Supergirl starts next week or something. So maybe I'll talk about that. Dan will not. He refuses.
I probably will not. I'm not a fan of Supergirl. So.
Anyway, catch y'all next time. I'm Dylan. That's Dan. See you later.
See you guys.